Welcome back to our Budget B-Series board showdown. Today we're going to be breaking down the features and specs of the Gigabyte B650 Aorus Pro AX. If you missed part one where we discussed the ASUS Rog Strix B650E-E, ASUS gets you with those naming conventions, you can check that out right here. The Gigabyte board's pricing comes sandwiched right between our higher end ASUS at $350 and the cheaper B650 Tomahawk at $220, with a price that runs you somewhere between $250 to $260 depending on what retailer you find it at. While it's cheaper, does this board still offer a better value, which is important, than the other two? Well, as always, while I get this thing unboxed, let's dive in and see what Gigabyte wants you to hear about it. I always love diving into the marketing speak, so Gigabyte wants you to know that a new era is coming. Daybreak hour for the B650 Aorus Pro AX. So the board supports twin 16 2-in-1 digital VRM designed with 90 amps per power stage. Of course, it supports DDR5 as all AM5 boards have to. It is PCIe Express 5.0 ready. We'll touch on that later because there's a little more to the story than what they drop in the marketing promo. Finally, the rear I/O, again, we'll touch on later, seems a little lacking to me. They leave out a display port out. They also drop from a full complement of audio jacks down to just a line out. So let's dive right in with our take on the board. First, we'll look at the design of the board. It does have an 8-layer PCB, which doesn't seem like something to brag about, but as you'll see in a next video, a lot of the lower end boards are going with just 6-layer PCB to kind of cut back some of the cost. The build quality of the board overall definitely rivals some of the higher end aspects that you would see on an X670 board or even the more expensive B650s. The heat sinks for the VRM and M.2s are fairly substantial. Again, it's hard to see on video, but I don't believe cooling is going to be an issue. On the topic of VRM, it has 16 2-in-1 power stages rated at 90 amps. So again, more than enough power to help out even the greediest chips. So you shouldn't have a problem if you want to throw like a 7900, 7950 in here, especially if you're going with the X3D model, since they use a little bit less power than the standard X variants. One thing I do want to touch on with the power supply is Gigabyte went with an 8x4 pin CPU power connector, which it's not going to cause an issue. But you would think with the power that they're delivering, an 8x8 would have been a better option. If anything, just for cable management and being able to use the bridged 8x8 connector, that's not going to make a huge difference, but it's more of a form over function type thing for me. On the topic of function, this board definitely delivers. Now, while the main PCIe expansion slot is only 4.0, we've covered in a lot of previous videos that while PCIe 5 may offer some future proofing, there isn't much necessity for it right now. And I also highly doubt that if you're building a rig in this price range using one of the more budget boards, you're probably not going to be moving into anything that'll take advantage of that anytime soon anyway. So that is one area where I think it's okay to trim back a little bit and it's not going to cost you any loss in functionality. There is also one Gen 5 M.2 slot with a very substantial heatsink on it, and while there aren't really any Gen 5 storage devices out yet, and I really doubt anyone will notice the difference in speed between, say, a 7,000 meg Gen 4 versus 10,000 Gen 5, it does offer you a little bit of future proofing there. So that is a nice necessity to have, and I think it's something that might come into play sooner than, say, spending that money on a PCIe 5.0 expansion slot. One thing of note here is this board is actually the only one that still offers a 1X slot down here. Both of the other boards we looked at didn't. think a lot of boards don't anymore. It's something that's not really used, but it's a nice touch. There's space for it, and Gigabyte lets you have one. One area where we do see some cost cutting is in the rear I/O. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it in every video. It is a huge pet peeve of mine whenever you start cutting out things like USB slots, especially Type-C, with so many devices moving over to Type-C connectors now. The board does give you one Type-C, but I would have liked to seen two like most have at this price point. Another thing is dropping the display port out. Doesn't always come into play. I mean, obviously you're gonna pair this with a great GPU more than likely, but for troubleshooting purposes, a lot of times you do need to jack straight into the motherboard just to get things running off of the CPU's iGPU. Another area where I don't know why they scrimped out, and they really should do better, dropping the full complement of audio jacks and going with just a line out. I do get it. Most people will just use a line out and put in a basic set of computer speakers or maybe even a good headset, but there are a lot of us out there that love to have a great audio setup on our gaming rigs, and it's something that in my mind I would consider an oversight, especially if you're still gonna have this board priced above the more entry-level models. Overall, while this board doesn't pack in quite as many features as the ASUS we previously looked at, it's still a solid board. It provides more than enough power to handle any of the AMD 7000 series chips. The cooling is substantial on it. It has a Gen 5 M.2 slot. The rear I/O is a little lacking, but overall, I mean, I think if you're looking for a budget build board, this wouldn't be a bad one to go with. It does provide enough features to handle a good mid to high tier system build. And again, just like previously, I'll drop some suggestions down in the description. I would also love to hear from you guys in the comments what you think about it. What is your opinion? Do you even like Gigabyte boards? They're starting to get a little bit of a bad rep amongst the crowd. I would love to hear your thoughts as always, guys. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video, don't forget to check out one of these. Make sure you like, subscribe, check out some of our other content, and as always, thanks for watching.